Behind bars, America's most dangerous inmates tell their stories. The moment everything changed. Imagine a small room with no windows. Just 4 concrete walls, a metal desk, and a single chair. That's where I was sitting waiting to meet 3 of the most dangerous inmates in America. Men who had lived through things most people can't even imagine. Men who wanted to tell their story, in their own words, for the first time. The door opened slowly. A guard stepped in and whispered, "Stay calm. Look them in the eyes, but don't stare." My heart was pounding. Then the first inmate walked in, a tall man covered in old scars. He didn't shout. He didn't try to act tough. He just sat down, looked at the camera, and said, "If people knew what happens behind these walls, they would never sleep the same again." Right after him, the second inmate entered, calm, quiet, almost too quiet. Then the third, a man who had spent over 20 years in isolation. 20 years, without touching another human being. This is their truth, their fear, their regrets, their lessons. This is what really happens behind bars. The man who never feared anyone. Until prison. His name was Marcus. Before prison, Marcus thought he was unstoppable. He grew up in a tough neighborhood, surrounded by older boys who taught him that showing fear was weakness. He got into fights. He made fast money. He believed nothing could break him. But the moment he arrived at the penitentiary, reality hit him like a hammer. He told me, "The first thing you hear is the metal gates closing behind you. It sounds like the world locking you out forever." Marcus described his first walk down the long hallway, officers on both sides, inmates watching from behind thick glass. Some stared. Some smiled in a way that made his stomach twist. Some whispered things he still refuses to repeat. He said the air felt heavy, like it was full of secrets. On his first night, he didn't sleep at all. Not because of noise. Not because of fear of someone hurting him. But because he realized something he never expected. He wasn't the toughest person in the room anymore. He told me, "Prison is full of people who look like they have nothing to lose. But inside, we all have something. A memory. A mistake. A moment we wish we could change." Marcus said he survived by keeping his head down, observing everything, and learning who to trust, which was almost no one. He wasn't trying to act strong now. He was trying to stay alive. He explained that the most dangerous part wasn't the violence. It was the pressure. The constant feeling that one wrong move could change your whole life again. Marcus looked straight at me and said, "I never feared anyone, until I met the version of myself that prison forced me to face." Then he took a long breath. A breath that sounded like years of weight sitting on his shoulders. And that's when the second inmate stepped forward. A man with a completely different story. A story that shocked even the guards listening nearby. The quiet one who saw everything. His name was Dre. He wasn't big. He didn't have tattoos. He didn't raise his voice or walk with the tough guy attitude most people expect from dangerous inmates. But behind that calm face, there was a man who had seen things most people couldn't handle. When Dre sat down, he placed his hands on the table, looked at the microphone, and said softly, "People think the loudest guy is the most dangerous. They're wrong." Dre explained that in every prison, there are 2 types of danger. The danger you can see, and the danger you never notice until it's too late. He told me a story from his second year behind bars. It happened during breakfast. The cafeteria was loud, voices echoing, trays hitting tables, guards shouting orders. Everyone was focused on food and tension, the 2 things that never disappeared in prison. But Dre noticed something strange. At a table across the room, 2 inmates he knew had been arguing for weeks were suddenly sitting next to each other, quietly. Nobody else paid attention. But Dre did. Just when people who hate each other suddenly act like friends, something is about to happen. 10 minutes later, the room exploded into chaos. Not the kind you see in movies. No dramatic shouting, no dramatic slow motion. Just fast, silent motion, the kind that makes your heart freeze. Dre didn't describe the details, and he didn't have to. His shaking hands told the story for him. He said the guards rushed in, officers yelled commands, metal clashed on the floor, and then everything went still. Too still. He looked at me and whispered, "See, people think the most dangerous thing in prison is the fights. But it's not. It's how fast things can change." After that incident, Dre learned how to read rooms better than most psychologists. He could tell when someone was angry. He could tell when someone was scared. He could tell when someone was pretending everything was fine, when it wasn't. He told me, "In here, your eyes are your best weapon and your best protection." Then Dre shared something even deeper. The moment he knew he had to change. One night, during count time, he heard an inmate in the next cell crying quietly. At first, Dre ignored it. Everyone minds their business in prison. But the crying didn't stop. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It sounded like someone trying their best not to fall apart. Dre said something inside him shifted. He whispered through the vent, "You good?" The voice answered, "I just miss my daughter." Dre went silent after telling me that part. His eyes turned red and he swallowed hard. "Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones carrying the most pain," he said. And then the third inmate stepped forward. A man whose story was completely different. Because his danger didn't come from anger or fear. It came from isolation, years of it. 20 years in the box. The third inmate was older. His hair was gray, his voice slow, and his eyes looked like they had seen too many years disappear. His name was Reynolds, but everyone in the prison called him Old Man. He wasn't dangerous because of his size. He wasn't dangerous because of his actions. He was dangerous because of what time had done to him. Reynolds spent 20 years in solitary confinement, the box. 20 years with no normal human contact. 20 years with nothing but a concrete cell, a steel toilet, and his own thoughts. When he sat down across from me, he didn't look angry or broken. He looked like someone who had learned to survive silence. He began with one sentence. "People think the box breaks you, but it also shows you who you really are." Then he took a deep breath and started telling his story. The first day. Reynolds said the first day in solitary is the hardest. No noise. No faces. No sunlight hitting your skin. Just the sound of your heartbeat echoing off the walls. He told me, "You start counting cracks in the wall just to know you're still alive." For the first week, he talked to himself. He said it kept his mind from slipping away. But after a month, the silence started talking back. Not voices, not anything imaginary, but the kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's pressing on your chest. Reynolds explained, "Humans aren't built to be alone that long. You start remembering everything you ever did wrong." The middle years. Around year 7, Reynolds said he stopped keeping track of time. He couldn't tell Monday from Friday, day from night, or summer from winter. Just every day felt the same. Like the world forgot me. Sometimes I forgot the world. He survived by creating routines. Touch the wall 3 times in the morning. Walk in circles 100 times. Talk to the light coming from the door slot. Not because he wanted to, but because routines kept his mind from disappearing. The turning point. One night, the silence was so deep it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Reynolds sat on the floor and whispered, "This can't be the end of my story." That sentence, whispered in a dark cell where nobody could hear him, became the moment he refused to let the box destroy him. He started reading every book they allowed him. He wrote letters to people he knew would never reply. He learned to meditate. He learned to slow his breathing and calm his thoughts. In the darkest place, I learned the brightest truth. I still had a life to fight for. Leaving the box. When he was finally moved out of solitary after 2 decades, the noise of the main prison block shocked him. His hands shook. His heart raced. He had forgotten how loud people were. Reynolds looked straight at me and said, "You think the box makes you dangerous. But the real danger starts when the world expects you to act normal after surviving something that no human should ever experience." As the 3 men sat together, Marcus, Dre, and Reynolds, the room felt different. Each of them dangerous in their own way. Each of them broken in their own way. Each of them human in their own way. And then Reynolds leaned forward and said, "People don't know the truth about what happens behind these walls. But maybe today we can change that. The rules that aren't written. When the three men began talking together, something powerful happened. Their voices didn't sound like separate stories anymore. They sounded like pieces of one big truth. A truth most people will never hear. Marcus leaned back in his chair and said, "If you want to survive behind bars, you better learn the rules that nobody teaches." Dre nodded. Reynolds stayed quiet, listening. And slowly, they started revealing the unwritten laws of prison, the rules that can save your life. Rule number 1. Don't look for trouble. Marcus explained it first. The loudest guys always fall first. He said that prison is filled with people who act tough for attention. But the real danger comes from the ones who stay silent, the ones who watch and wait. Marcus described his first month. Never brag. Never stare. Never interrupt someone's space. And never, ever, assume you know who someone really is. He told me, "In here, you don't win by being the strongest. You win by being smart enough to walk away." Rule number 2, don't owe anyone anything. Dre took over. He leaned forward, his voice calm. The worst thing you can ever do is owe a favor. He explained that a favor in prison is never free. A snack today, a phone call, extra soap, even someone protecting you in the yard, all of it has a price. And that price usually pulls you into something you can't escape. Dre said, "If someone helps you, it's because they want something later. And when that day comes, you can't say no." He looked at me with a face so serious it made the entire room go still. People think the danger is the violence. The real danger is the deals you never wanted to make. Rule number 3, keep your circle small. Reynolds finally spoke. His voice was slow, steady, almost quiet, but it carried more weight than anything said before. Most people behind bars aren't your friends. They're just surviving, same as you. He explained that trust is rare inside prison. Everyone is trying to protect themselves. Everyone is watching their back. Reynolds said he only trusted 2 people in 20 years, and even that was risky. In a place where everyone is hurting, hurt spreads fast. He told me that keeping a small circle doesn't mean you're scared. It means you're choosing safety. Rule number 4, never forget the outside world. This one surprised me. Marcus explained. The moment you stop thinking about your family, your freedom, your future, that's when prison wins. He told me about guys who stopped caring, guys who stopped calling home, stopped writing letters, stopped dreaming. Those were the men who changed the most. And not in a good way. Marcus said, "Hope is hard in here. But when you lose it, you lose yourself." Dre added, "Even the toughest man needs something to fight for." And Reynolds ended it with, "If you forget who you are, this place will decide for you." As they spoke, it hit me how different these 3 men were, but how similar their lessons were. Danger doesn't just come from violence. It comes from fear. It comes from silence. It comes from forgetting the person you used to be. And then Marcus said something that prepared us for the next part of the story, the part that was darker, heavier, and more emotional. Now let's tell them what really happens. When the doors close at night. When the doors close at night. When Marcus said those words, the room changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It just got heavier. Because every inmate knows the truth. Daytime is survival. Nighttime is reflection. And reflection can hurt more than anything else inside prison. Dre was the first to speak. People think night in prison is peaceful. That's when the real battles start. The sound of a lock. Every night, right before lights out, the guards walk down the hallway checking doors. Then they hit the final switch. Clack. It's a loud metal sound, heavy, echoing through the whole unit. Marcus said, "That's the moment you realize there's no escape from your own thoughts." During the day, inmates distract themselves with routine, meals, yard time, work, noise. But at night, everything stops. Every mistake, every regret, every choice that brought them here, rises up. Reynolds, the man who spent 20 years in isolation, explained it the best. When the world gets quiet, your mind gets loud. The night voices. Dre explained that at night, the prison doesn't go silent. You can hear things you never noticed during the day. Footsteps, whispers, someone having a bad dream, someone pacing, someone praying. The prayers always hit me the hardest. Some of the toughest men you'll ever meet cry out to God when the lights turn off. Not begging for freedom, not asking for miracles, just asking for peace. The weight of regret. Reynolds looked down at the table, rubbing his hands slowly. Night is when you face the truth about yourself. He explained that people on the outside see dangerous inmates. But inside, once the darkness comes, many of those same men face something even more powerful than fear. Regret. Regret for broken families. Regret for bad decisions. Regret for the life they could have lived. Reynolds said he used to lie awake and replay every moment that led him to prison, like a movie he couldn't turn off. He whispered, "Eventually, you realize the person you hurt the most was yourself." The search for hope. Marcus leaned forward, his voice softer than before. Night is also when you realize hope is a choice. Some men write letters even though they know they may never get a reply. Some read books to keep their minds alive. Some stare at the ceiling and make promises to themselves. I will do better. I will not waste my second chance. I will make it out. Marcus said that no matter how tough someone looks during the day, night exposes everyone. He summed it up perfectly. Behind bars, you learn real strength in the dark. Then Dre said something that led us into the next chapter. Something deeper, something more personal. He looked straight into the camera and said, "But the real story behind these walls is what shaped us before we ever got here. The lives they lived before the bars." Dre's words changed the whole tone of the room. Until now they had talked about prison, the rules, the danger, the silence, the fear. But this chapter wasn't about the walls. It was about who they were before the walls ever closed in. Because every dangerous inmate America fears was once just a person trying to survive life on the outside. Marcus, the moment everything went wrong. Marcus kept his eyes on the table as he spoke. He said he grew up in a neighborhood where people didn't talk about dreams, only survival. His mom worked 2 jobs. His dad wasn't around. His uncles taught him toughness, not guidance. Marcus said, "When the world feels like it's against you, the wrong choices start looking like the only choices." He joined the wrong crowd young. By 13 he was skipping school. By 15 he thought fast money was the only way to feel powerful. But the day everything changed was when he hurt someone during a fight he never planned to start. He told me, "One moment can change your whole life. Just one." He wasn't trying to excuse anything. He wasn't blaming anyone. He was explaining how fast a young life can turn when nobody teaches you another path. Dre, the man who saw too much. Dre's story was quieter, but heavier. He didn't grow up violent. He didn't grow up angry. He grew up watching. Watching his parents argue. Watching bills pile up. Watching neighbors struggle. Watching people fall into things they couldn't escape. Dre said, "People think danger starts with violence. But for me, danger started with hopelessness." He was the kid who tried to stay out of trouble. But trouble found him anyway. A friend brought him into something he didn't fully understand, and one mistake pulled him into a world he never meant to join. He told me, "By the time I realized what I stepped into, it was too late." There was pain in his voice, but also acceptance. He wasn't running from responsibility. He was showing how quiet, slow, unnoticed decisions can build into something life-changing. Reynolds, the road that led to the box. Reynolds closed his eyes before telling his story. His past wasn't fast or explosive. It wasn't one moment. It was years of small cracks in his life. He grew up in a broken home. He had no guidance, no direction, no one to teach him right from wrong. He drifted through life, making small mistakes that turned into bigger ones. Reynolds said, "Nobody wakes up wanting to ruin their life. Most of us just get lost." The moment that sent him to prison, he didn't describe it in detail. Not because he was hiding something, but because he didn't want to cause fear or glorify anything. He simply said, "I made a terrible decision that hurt people. And I've spent years trying to understand how I became that man." When he looked at me after saying that, his eyes were full of something rare inside prison. Accountability, not excuses. Not blame. Just truth. What they all shared. As different as the three men were, their lives followed similar patterns. Growing up without support. Making one wrong decision. Falling into environments they couldn't escape. Losing direction before they even understood life. And carrying guilt that changed them forever. Dre said quietly, "People see dangerous inmates. They don't see the kids we used to be. The kids who needed help, but never got it." Marcus added, "Nobody teaches you how to break the cycle. You learn it too late." Reynolds finished with, "That's why we're telling our stories. If someone hears this and chooses a different path, then maybe everything we went through means something." And that led us to the next chapter. The part no one expects from America's most dangerous inmates. The lessons they want the world to learn. The lessons they want the world to know. For the first time since the interviews began, all three men, Marcus, Dre, and Reynolds, sat quietly. Not because they were tired, but because what they were about to say mattered deeply to them. These weren't lessons about toughness. Not about crime. Not about prison culture. These were warnings, shaped by years of pain, regret, and hard truth. Lessons they wished someone had told them when they were young. Lessons that might have changed everything. Lesson 1. A bad choice can follow you forever. Marcus spoke first. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low but steady. Most young people think they got time. Time to get better. Time to grow up. Time to fix mistakes later. He shook his head slowly. But one wrong choice, one moment of anger, one bad decision, can follow you for the rest of your life. Marcus explained that he wasn't trying to scare people, he was trying to open eyes. A fight. A dare. A moment you think makes you look strong. It takes 5 seconds to ruin a future you haven't even lived yet. Lesson 2. The people you follow can become your prison. Dre took a breath before speaking. His voice was soft, but every word felt heavy. You don't just choose friends. You choose their future too. He explained how he followed people he trusted. Not because he wanted trouble, but because he wanted to belong. That desire led him into a situation he never planned for. A situation that changed his life forever. Dre looked straight into the camera. If you follow the wrong people, you follow their endings too. He said many young people think loyalty means doing whatever your friends say. But real loyalty means protecting each other, not dragging each other into problems. Lesson 3. Pain is not weakness, but hiding it is dangerous. Reynolds took his time before speaking. His voice was slow and thoughtful. People think showing pain makes you soft. But hiding pain, that's what destroys you. He explained how years of staying silent made him feel alone, even when he was surrounded by others. He said many men end up in prison because they never talk about what hurts them. Never ask for help. Never admit they're struggling. Never open up to anyone. Reynolds tapped the table lightly. If I spoke up earlier in my life, I might have chosen a different road. Lesson 4. You are worth more than your worst day. This was the only lesson all three men agreed on instantly. Marcus nodded. Dre nodded. Reynolds nodded. They each said versions of the same truth. A bad moment doesn't make you a bad person. Your future isn't decided by one mistake. You can still change, no matter how deep you feel stuck. These words weren't excuses, they were reminders. Reminders that young people deserve a chance. Reminders that guidance matters. Reminders that nobody should feel like they have no future. Marcus said, if you hear this, don't think you're too deep to get out. You ain't. There's always a better path. Dre added, ask for help. Talk to someone. Don't wait until it's too late. And Reynolds finished with, you are bigger than your mistakes. If you choose to be. The room went silent again, but this time it wasn't heavy silence. It was peaceful. Human. These men weren't glorifying anything. They weren't making excuses. They were showing the world the truth. Behind bars, dangerous inmates carry stories, not monsters. Lessons, not threats. Warnings, not pride. Then Marcus took a deep breath and said the line that leads into the next chapter. But if you really want to know who survives behind bars, you need to know what friendship looks like in a place with no trust. Friendship, Indiana, a place with no trust. When Marcus said that, Dre let out a quiet laugh. Not a funny laugh, but the kind you make when something is too real to ignore. Reynolds folded his hands. Marcus leaned back. And slowly, they all began to speak about the rarest thing behind prison walls. Friendship. Not the movie version. Not the dramatic version. The real version, the kind that can save you or destroy you, depending on who you trust. Friends are rare inside. Marcus started. You don't walk into prison making friends. You walk in trying not to make enemies. He explained that most people inside are cautious. Everyone has a past. Everyone has a reputation. Everyone has something they're protecting. Marcus said you learn quickly. Some smiles hide danger. Some quiet men carry storms inside them. Some people want to use you. And some don't want to be seen at all. He said real friendship is like finding water in a desert. Possible, but rare. Dre, the one friend who saved my mind. Dre told a story from his second year. There was an older inmate named Luis, a calm man who had been locked up for nearly 3 decades. One day, Dre was sitting in the yard, overwhelmed, stressed, and close to breaking. Luis sat next to him and said, "You look like a man carrying too much on his shoulders." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't an insult. It was a simple observation. Dre said that one sentence changed something inside him. Luis became a mentor, not a partner in trouble, not someone who wanted anything. Just someone who understood pain and didn't judge it. Dre said, "A real friend in prison isn't someone who helps you fight. It's someone who helps you stay human." Reynolds, the only 2 people I ever trusted. Reynolds took a breath before speaking. I've met thousands of inmates. I trusted only 2. He explained that those 2 men weren't loud, weren't trying to look tough, weren't involved in problems. They were survivors, calm, patient, and honest. Reynolds said they helped him keep his sanity during the darkest parts of his sentence. They talked through vents, shared books, encouraged each other not to give up, not to fall apart, not to let prison turn them into something they weren't. Reynolds said, "Friendship behind bars isn't about hanging out. It's about staying alive, inside your mind." Marcus, the friend I almost lost. Marcus's story was different. He had one real friend inside, a younger inmate named Caleb. Caleb was quiet, smart, always reading. Marcus called him Little Bro. One day, Caleb got into a problem Marcus didn't see coming, a misunderstanding that spiraled fast. Marcus said, "I almost lost him. And that's when I realized something. You don't get many chances to protect the few real people you meet in here." After that day, Marcus stayed close to Caleb, not to control him, but to guide him, to help him avoid making the same mistakes Marcus had made when he was young. He told me, "I couldn't change my past, but maybe I could help someone fix their future." The truth about Friendship, Indiana prison. The 3 men agreed. Real friends behind bars don't make your life harder, they make it safer. Real friends don't pull you into trouble, they pull you out of it. Real friends don't ask for loyalty through violence, they give loyalty through honesty. Reynolds summed it up perfectly. In a place full of walls, the only open door you get is the one someone else helps you walk through. Then Dre leaned in and said the line that leads into the next chapter. A chapter deeper, heavier, and more emotional than all the rest. But even friendships can't protect you from the battles you fight inside your own mind. The battles you fight inside your own mind. When Dre said those words, the room shifted again. Not in fear, but in honesty. Up until now, they had talked about danger, regret, survival, friendship, all things you can see or feel from the outside. But the next part of their story wasn't about fists, or rules, or reputation. It was about the mind, the place no one can see, and the place every inmate has to face alone. The mind doesn't leave you alone. Marcus was the first to speak. He looked at the floor and said quietly, "Behind bars, the real fights don't happen in the yard. They happen in your own head." He explained that the mind becomes louder in prison. You start overthinking. You question your past. You question your future. You question who you've become. Marcus said some nights he paced back and forth in his cell, trying to control thoughts that felt too heavy to carry. You can beat everyone around you, but you still gotta beat the person in your own reflection. The weight of memories. Dre spoke next. He said the hardest part of prison isn't the walls, it's the memories. Not the painful ones. Not the mistakes. But the small, everyday memories of freedom. The sound of kids playing outside. The smell of your mother's cooking. The chair you used to sit in. The streets you used to walk. Dre said. You start remembering stuff you didn't even know mattered. One night, he woke up because he dreamed of riding a bus, something so simple, but something he hadn't done in years. He sat on the edge of his bunk and cried quietly, not from weakness but from the feeling of losing pieces of a life he once had. Your mind reminds you of who you were when the world outside starts forgetting you exist. Reynolds, the fight for sanity. Reynolds had survived the longest mental battle of all, 20 years in isolation. He spoke slowly, measuring each word. The hardest part of being alone is realizing you can't run from yourself. He explained that isolation forces you to confront every part of your mind. The fears, the guilt, the thoughts you ignored for years. Some days he felt strong. Some days he felt lost. Some days he felt like his thoughts were pulling him in different directions. But he found a way to stay grounded. He read. He wrote. He created routines. He talked to himself in a calm voice. He learned to slow his breathing. Reynolds said, "The mind can be a prison, or it can be a place you rebuild." The pressure of guilt. All three men agreed on this part. Guilt, real guilt, is one of the strongest forces behind bars. Marcus said, "You don't just think about what you did. You think about who you hurt." Dre added, "There were nights I said sorry in my head 100 times, knowing the person would never hear it." Reynolds finished. Guilt doesn't punish you. It teaches you. The moment they realized change was possible. Each inmate had a moment when they realized they needed to change, not because a guard told them, not because they wanted early release, but because they wanted a different future. Marcus said it was the day he got a letter from his mother telling him she still believed he could turn his life around. Dre said it was the night he prayed for the first time in years. Reynolds said it was the morning he looked at his reflection and saw someone tired of being lost. All three men realized something powerful. You can't change your past, but you can change the person you bring into the future. Then Marcus leaned in, voice steady, and said, "But the part people never talk about is the day you finally get the chance to leave these walls." Dre added, "Freedom is a blessing. And a test." Reynolds closed his eyes and whispered, "The outside world hits harder than prison ever did." And that leads us into the next chapter. The day they walked out from behind bars. The day the gates opened. When the three men began talking about freedom, something changed in their eyes. Not excitement, not joy, but a deep, heavy mix of hope and fear. Because people on the outside think freedom is the happy ending. But the truth is much more complicated. Marcus said, "Getting out isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a whole new battle." The final walk. Reynolds described the moment the gates opened for him. He stood there holding the small plastic bag that carried everything he owned, a pair of old shoes, some papers, and a toothbrush. I stepped outside, and the air felt different. Too big, too free, too loud. For 20 years, his world had been a 6x9 cell. Now the world was huge. Cars were faster. Buildings were taller. People moved like they were late for something. Reynolds felt overwhelmed, not because he wasn't strong, but because freedom after years of silence felt like waking up in a different universe. It's strange. You dream of leaving for so long. Then the moment it happens, you feel lost again. Marcus, the hug that broke me. Marcus's experience was different. When he walked out, his mother was waiting for him, older, tired, but smiling. When she hugged me, I felt something break inside me, but in a good way. For years, Marcus carried guilt like a weight chained to his chest. But that hug reminded him he still had something worth fighting for. He didn't cry in front of her, but he cried later, alone, because he realized he had been given another chance. A second chance he refused to waste. Dre, the hard part they don't tell you. Dre stepped outside with hope, but reality hit him fast. Freedom didn't erase pressure. It added new pressure. He had to find a job. Find a place to live. Avoid slipping back into old circles. Prove he had changed, not just to others but to himself. Dre said, being free means you gotta rebuild from zero. And that's not easy. But he kept moving, slowly, carefully, step by step, determined to build a future he never thought he'd have. The reality of a second chance. All three men said the same thing. Freedom is not an escape. It's responsibility. It's work. It's rebuilding. It's learning how to live again. Reynolds said, you don't just walk away from the past. You learn from it, and you let it shape a better version of you. Marcus added, the world gives you one more chance. You better honor it. Dre nodded and whispered, a second chance is a gift. And a warning. The truth behind the walls. As the interview ended, the three men sat quietly at the table. Not as dangerous inmates. Not as stories. Not as headlines. But as human beings. Flawed, hurting, changing, trying. Their stories weren't meant to inspire fear. Or admiration. Or judgment. Their stories were meant to teach. Teach young people that one choice can change everything. Teach parents that guidance matters more than they realize. Teach communities that support can save lives long before punishment ever happens. Teach everyone that people are more complicated than their past. Marcus, Dre, and Reynolds stood up to leave, and before they walked out, Dre turned to me and said, if one kid watches this and avoids the road we took, then everything we shared was worth it. Marcus added, real strength isn't surviving prison. Real strength is choosing a better life. And Reynolds, the man who survived 20 years in silence, looked into the camera and gave the final message. Behind bars, we learn the truth the hard way. But you can learn it while you're free. Fade out. Black screen. Silence. Then one final line appears. Your choices build your future. Choose wisely.